Beautiful. Hi, Jar. Hi, Dom.
Hi there.
Hi, honey.
Thanks
How are you?
so much.
All right, done.
Hi.
So, last week we spoke about part one of what we titled The Forces That Shape Us. We want to take another step in that direction. What we focused on last week, as we remember, was this notion that as we know, the physical world and the metaphysical world are absolutely integrated. That's how we live our lives. And we don't even think much about that. We just live our lives that way, knowing that what we pray from our physical mouths, Hayeb, in this physical reality, will be heard by Hakadosh Baruch Hu in an absolutely non-physical reality. That what we think about, that fifth dimension, so to speak, that level of nivuah that we're all entitled to and we all enjoy, comes from a non-physical dimension. So when we pray, when we act, we know that our actions, that our words move immediately beyond the physical. They impact the physical, but move immediately beyond it because we know there isn't any hard, heavy wall. So, what we mentioned last week in that context was that there are forces, there are elements, there are that have the power to impact us. And the same way we can't quantify how we can have a fifth sense, we can't quantify how our actions can be recorded in this forever venue. We can't quantify how our words could be heard by God or his words by us. We also can't quantify this notion of tum'ah, of impurity, and how it might impact us. And we spoke about it at some length. And we focused on the idea of netilat yadayim, of washing, primarily in the morning. And we spoke about the system, the process, and the proximity, and highlighted that to the extent that it could be done immediately by the bed, immediately when waking up. And in the system that we talked about, before touching anything, before starting a day, it fills that empty void that the absence of the neshama allowed during the night, that now was filled with tum'ah, was filled by this impossible to understand impurity. And when we wash, when we take that extreme, the most extreme part of our body, and we cleanse it with midat chesed, with the characteristic of chesed, which is embodied by water, we blunt that tum'ah, we clear the deck, we clear the opportunity for us, and we open up the great possibility of Hayom Harat Olam, of a new day. So that was our focus yesterday. So the force that shapes us, could shape us negatively, is tum'ah, is impurity. Hi, Marielle. And the force that blunts that tum'ah is water, is chesed, removing it, allowing us clarity, allowing us to be genuine, allowing a luminescence. That's what we want. Do we understand it? Absolutely not. Can we conjecture at it to some extent? And that's what we did. Okay. We're going to move into another dimension today that's more tangible because the mahalach of humankind has allowed more of it to become, sorry, one second, has allowed more of it to reach science and common scholarship. But we're going to start a little bit at the beginning. So let's just open up with the question. When we say a beracha, when we say a blessing before we eat, what's the purpose in saying it? We're saying a blessing before we eat. What's the purpose? What would you
Thank
say?
God for giving us what he did.
Thank God for giving us what he did. So Abe, if that were the purpose, when would I be saying the beracha?
Post.
Huh?
More
Post.
of an acknowledgement.
What, Sonny? What's that?
I think it's more of like an acknowledgement, that you're able to have it. And then after the Beracha Acharona is more of, the thanking.
Okay, so it's an acknowledgement of the opportunity. Yeah, beautiful. And the beracha acharona, where it all started, is gratitude, is the expression of gratitude. But let's drill down a little bit further. So if we were just acknowledging the opportunity, which is absolutely correct, we could do it in a very generic way, right? We could say, like, they say in certain circles, thank you, God, for the food I'm about to eat. Right? Right? People do that, right? It's okay, but was that Robin? Hi, Robin. People do that. I got that laugh. I can't miss that laugh. But we don't do that. What do we do? What do we do with these berachot? How does it work on our end? How it works is it's very specific. It's very detailed. In other words, you can't say the beracha for something that grows on the ground. You can't say the beracha thanking God for something that grew on a tree. Even though, come on, they both come from nature. And if it's just an acknowledgement, which it is an acknowledgement, so let me just say shakol on everything. Let me just say, thank you, God, for the food I'm about to eat. Or let me be a little more specific, but to be absolutely specific to the point where if I say the wrong beracha, I'm not yet saying dechovah, I didn't fulfill my obligation. So there's more to it. It's beyond the acknowledgement, which is true. It's beyond the anticipated appreciation, which is true. It's much more than that. When I say the beracha, a different beracha on grain than I say on an apple, or a different beracha on wine than I say on orange juice, what I'm doing is I'm reaching in to that non-physical element of that food, that energy, that tum'ah in the positive, and I'm accessing it. Again, when I say the beracha, when I reach with my words beyond the physical into the metaphysical, by uttering these words, which we know, as we've said, move us beyond the physical to the metaphysical. Now what I'm doing is I'm reaching out to that food and I'm engaging the inherent energy that's in it. Now, there are some people on this class who deal with this all the time, right? We know that all foods are not created equal, right? We know that. Mm-hmm. We know that foods have different capacity. And the capacity is getting more and more detailed and specific. We have foods that generally make us healthier, and then foods that generally make us the opposite of that. We have foods that will make specific people more energized, and foods that will make other people digest their food better, and some will have the opposite effects. And now what's very interesting is that the research is going now from how foods affect our body to how foods affect our mind. So there's an absolute, undeniable physical element, benefit, component to food, pashut, that we know. But what our rabbis reached for to sensitize us to, when they told us to go from the beracha acharona, the beracha that said after I eat, and dragged it to a beracha before I eat, was when you have the opportunity to enjoy something, understand that it's not just the apple or the machshi or the water, it's everything in it is about to come into you. And rather than simply engaging it, enjoying it, partnering with it on a physical level, when I say a beracha and I reach into the metaphysical, I reach into its metaphysical. Okay, so far, I think this is stuff we all got. Yeah, Zeke?
Are we saying that we can't reach into the metaphysical without the beracha? Is that the key to the metaphysical?
That's what I want to say. Yeah, that's what I want to say. That we're not going to get to that metaphysical without the beracha. That's right. Now, you might say no, and I can't argue strongly to say no. I can't, you might say no, or anyone might say no. They can say, listen, If the food is inherently has the metaphysical, it's going to naturally impact me metaphysically. And you know something? I would completely agree with you. But I'm going to disagree because we have berachot. So that tells me that even though we can engage the metaphysical because it is what it is and I can't get around it, it's going to help me no matter what. We're going to say that the beracha unlocks more, unleashes more of it. So I agree with you. I could easily make the argument that I'm getting it anyway. I'm getting it anyway because it's there. Once we all agree that the food has an energy, it's hard to say that if I don't say the beracha, I'm not going to benefit by that energy. But at the same time, because we live in this boundaryless reality of physical, metaphysical with a flow back and forth, it's also very compelling to say that the beracha will engage a greater level of that energy, physical and metaphysical, than would have been gotten otherwise.
Okay. Maybe just to to support what you're saying, maybe the beracha has a way of making us eat l'shem shamayim by mechaven our thoughts instead of eating just for pleasure or because we're hungry, but to eat for to be able to have strength to serve Hashem. So maybe the beracha focuses us so that helps us to tap into the metaphysical more.
Beautiful. It creates a different reality, a different consciousness, and
A different consciousness, exactly.
Beautiful. Love it.
Like they said,
love it. Love it. It's so strong, makes so much sense. Now, an adjunct point to this that we have to hold is, and where did I first learn this point? When we started to do Hanukkah Bayit, you go to someone just purchased a new home, and you sit in this new house, and you read and you speak to the walls of the building. When you read what we read for Hanukkah Bayit, what are we doing essentially? We're going through the core things that we've committed our life to in terms of Torah and our derech hayim and our life approach. And we're reading them to the sheetrock, to the wood floor, to the light fixtures, right? Zeke, who are we reading them to? I'm reading them to my building. What do you mean? Can my building hear them? Obviously, yes. So when we do a Hanukkah Bayit and we open up our hearts to our home in those first days or weeks or months when they're in the house, what are we doing? We're expressing to the house what we as a family care about, our commitment to Torah, our commitment to Gemilut Chasadim, our commitment to Yirat Hashem, our commitment to family. We're reading that to the sheetrock, so to speak, not so to speak. We're reading it to the sheetrock.
An inanimate object that you're not eating it.
I ain't eating it, right? So what am I doing?
So you're putting a spell on it or something. I'm making sure
putting
you
a
don't.
spell on it. I'm putting a spell in it. You know why I'm putting a spell in it? Because there's no such thing as inanimate. There's absolutely no such thing. So even the domem, even that which we call inanimate, the wood, the concrete, the light fixture, which you would call inanimate, which you would call lifeless, has life. And therefore, we sit and we address it and we say, dear sheetrock walls, dear chair, here's what we care about as a family. You hear me loud and clear? This is what we want to build within your shelter. Help me do it. You know why? Because you got energy too.
So it's not just about us. It's not about us psyching ourselves into acknowledging that so that we fulfill it, self-fulfilling prophecy in a sense. It's not just about that. It's literally connecting some kind of circuit that turns the light on the other end of it somewhere, some other way.
That's right.
Wow.
That's right. There ain't nothing that is not alive. Everything in Hakadosh Baruch Hu's world has energy. Everything
Right.
has cognition. Everything has relationship possibility. Everything. Okay, it's easy to accept this, Jake, right? It's easy to accept it when we think of medaber, hai, someach, right? When we think of the other categories, when we think of human beings who can speak, when we think of animals, when we think of plants, we can easily accept there that we emit energy, as do they. And in fact, even though me and the plant don't really, we're never trained in a common language, we can have one. And the same thing with the lion and the tiger and the bear. And the same thing with the sheetrock, because there's an energy there. Okay, so far? So, introduction. When
Can we talk about what's the difference between if you, I mean, I know I asked this question and I gotta just do it when I asked it, when we made the Hanukkah Habayit in my house. And I said, what happens if we don't do it? I said, you don't think about that, you do it. That was the answer I got, but
Okay, so
what happens if you don't do it?
what happens is you're missing an opportunity to connect to these surroundings and have them partner with you to build your family values. That's
So
what
are you risking some catastrophe in your home because of that? Is that possible?
I would never put it in those terms.
Never, you wouldn't put it that because it's dangerous with a lot of people
I wouldn't say
listening and
anything
all.
like that, but I would say that you miss a gigantic opportunity
Right.
to have every inch of sheetrock your partner.
Sure.
It's a very big thing. And, you know, you know, many of us can attest to certain things, you know, you walk into a home and a home has energy.
Yeah.
Everybody has walked into a home who has a level of awareness will sense a certain energy.
Sure.
Certain homes are more welcoming, certain homes are more warm, certain homes are cold, certain homes are austere. There's an energy, it's real. Good.
I'm sitting on a couch. It's just a couch.
Just a couch?
Yeah,
Yeah, think so?
yeah,
All right, so then talk to me. Who's that, Myrna?
yeah.
Super. Talk to me about Chanukah Tabayit. Talk to me about Domem, the so-called inanimate world, dimension. Talk to me about those. How do you see them?
Not all the same thing. Not all the same thing.
How would you see them? Hey, Ezra, how are you? Great to see you. How would you describe them, Myrna?
Because when you're talking about the Chanukah Tabayit, it's the energy of the people that's making it be what it is. But when you're talking about a piece of furniture, I'm having difficulty understanding.
Okay, stay with me. I hear it. I want you to challenge yourself with the following premise: that we hold that the domain dimension, the seemingly inanimate dimension of reality, is not lifeless. It has life and it has energy. And in fact, science has said that to be true. There is nothing that exists without movement, that exists without generation. Nothing will last forever because there's absolute movement, there's growth, there's deterioration, right? The couch wears out.
Yes.
The rock over time will wear down from the water or the air. So there isn't any such thing in our reality that's absolutely permanently immovable. There isn't any such thing. So hold your thoughts. I'm with you, and let's move a little bit further and see where we go. So we started with the idea that we say a beracha before we eat food because we want to engage it on a metaphysical level, on an energy level, partner with it, and benefit maximally by what it has to offer. Fine. Okay. We have a very interesting handful of words that frames a very important halakha for us. And the end of a litany of mitzvot in Parashat Mishpatim, we have 4 or 5 words that change the Jewish world, that shake it to its core, that give birth to, I would say, hundreds of halachot, if not hundreds, certainly a few hundred halachot. And what is that? Lo tevashel gedi b'chalev imo. So at the end of a long list of mitzvot in Parashat Mishpatim, we have the mitzvah that says, if you slaughtered a mother and her calf on the same day, don't cook them together. It's asur to take the meat of the calf, of the baby, and cook it in the milk of the mother. Okay. The question is why? Simple question. Why? Both of them are gone. The mother is already slaughtered. By the way, that's what we do with cows, right? Very often. The mother is already slaughtered. The baby is already slaughtered. So if you're talking to me about compassion for animals, that's over. You can't talk to me about that. So what is this prohibition that's written 3 times in the Torah? 3 times against cooking the baby, meat of the baby in the milk of the mommy. So our rabbis say some very interesting things. Rabbeinu Bachya, who was a 13th century scholar from Spain, who was one of the most prolific of the Mefarshim on the Chumash, says that when you cook the baby's meat in the mommy's milk, it just expresses a great level of insensitivity. It's inhumane. It's harsh. But 1 minute, it wasn't harsh when we slaughtered them. From his perspective, not. We understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the right after the flood, from the period after the flood, to slaughter animals and eat them. Not that that'll necessarily be the case forever, but for the time being, it is. Gave us the right to do that. And we have a license to do it, and we're taught how to do it, and so on. Good. But Rabbeinu Bachya says, but when you cook the meat and the milk together, this particular meat and milk, you're showing a level of lack of care that's unacceptable in Judaism. Okay. The Rashbam and Ibn Ezra Ramban say, they take it one step further from Rabbeinu Bachya, and they say you're showing a level of outrage, anger, absolute lack of care, achsariyut. It's like an inhumanity by doing this. Very strong. Again, ain't nobody living here anymore. They're both gone. Okay. You go to the Kabbalistic side of things, and now it starts to get very interesting. Kabbalistic side says, listen, the milk of the mom is chesed, is midat chesed, the attribute of chesed, of kindness, let's call it, like water is. And the meat of the calf is midat gevurah, is might, is force. Those 2 elements, kindness and force, can engage successfully in the metaphysical world, but can't engage together successfully in the physical world, the same way linen and wool can't. And when they're forced together in the physical world, then it creates a dissonance in the human being who eats that.
But it doesn't say anything about eating it. It talks about cooking it.
Beautiful.
The cooking it is also, right? It doesn't talk about ingesting it.
Beautiful, you're right. So our rabbis say that the reason that this was written 3 times in the Chumash, 1 time to teach us not to cook it, 1 time to teach us not to eat it, and 1 time to teach us not to get any benefit from it, which means not to cook it and sell it for a profit. Good?
I would have assumed that meant don't even cook it. Forget call the homer, don't eat it. I mean, that's what I would assume, right? It's like bad to cook it. Don't put it in your mouth.
But you wouldn't necessarily get a kal vachomer from it. You might say if it was written once with the terminology lo tevashel, don't cook a calf in its mother's milk, you'd say don't cook. But it's written 3 times. But it gets better. You're gonna be more uncomfortable in a few minutes. You could stay unmuted because you're gonna be more uncomfortable in a few minutes. It's okay. All right. So it's written 3 times. Yeah, it's written 3 times. Okay. On the an interesting sidebar our rabbis bring down is that Abraham Avinu, if you remember, what does he feed his 3 guests? He feeds them. He tells his helpers to get them cheese and meat. Now, of course, it's true that the Torah wasn't fully fleshed out then. Of course, obviously, but meat and cheese, specifically, dafka, throw it at him, skip 1. The rabbis from the Kabbalistic side say a very interesting thing. They say the reason that he ordered them to be given meat and cheese, serene, was
He knew they were angels.
perfect. He knew they were angels. Exactly. And it don't matter for the angel. It's not an issue for the angel, because in terms of the metaphysical, where the angel hangs out, that combining of chesed, which would be the milk, and gevurah, which would be the meat, is a positive thing. Okay. So another point on the calf in the mom's milk from the Zohar. He writes it on this parasha in Sefer Shemot. He says that anyone who eats meat and milk together brings bad judgment to the world. Okay, it's the Zohar. We can't go that far with it, but brings bad judgment to the world. Okay, fine.
That any Jew or any human
Any
being?
Jew, any Jew. Now, point A, food has energy. It has energy, we know, to impact the physical body. Now we know, based on science, it has energy to impact the brain. And now we learn from the concept of a beracha before we eat, that I unlock its energy to impact me metaphysically, spiritually. That was point A. Point B, there's a halacha in the Chumash that's brought 3 separate times that talks about the baby, the calf, and the mom's milk. We learn you can't cook it, you can't eat it, you can't sell it. Why? Really, why? And we're moving back into this energy zone, that it creates an absolutely destructive energy, even in its cooking, even in its selling, with the Jew having anything to do with it, right? Our topic, the forces that shape us, it creates a negative energy, and that negative energy is destructive and we want to avoid it. So far, we're okay, right? Yeah, okay. It's going to get a little better now, a little hairier. So hold on. Now, we have a perspective that our rabbis bring down that says it's based on the 10 Commandments, the Aseret HaDiberot. Our rabbis say the following. They say that the last mitzvah in a list of mitzvot is the most important. Chachamzik, right? The last one, the last mitzvah in a list of mitzvot, Myrna, you with me, is the most important, and it is the cause of everything that happened before it. Okay, let's be more clear. We have 10 commandments, right? What does it say in the 10 commandments? Believe in God, don't have anybody else, keep Shabbat, respect a parent unconditionally, absolutely unconditionally. Don't go with another person's wife. Don't steal. Don't lie in court. Don't murder. And the last of the 10 is don't covet. Lo tachmod. And our rabbis say that that one, because it's last in a list of mitzvot, is the most important and is the cause of everything that comes before it. What do you say, Serene? How do you feel about that?
I agree. I don't think you would lie if you weren't jealous or cheat on some, cheat on on your spouse if you didn't covet someone else's spouse. I mean, I think you could apply it to each one.
Beautiful. So you would agree that this mitzvah, this lo tachmod that comes at the end, was deliberately put by Borei Olam at the end in order to give us an insight on everything that preceded it. And even though it's listed last, it is the cause for everything that precedes it, for the violation of everything that precedes it.
Or maybe it's the
And-
hardest.
What, Ed?
Or maybe it's the hardest to do. And if you
So-
could do that, you could do the others.
Okay, if you could do that, you could do the others. Beautiful. Okay, but I'm with you on that. I think that's beautiful. Are you also okay to go one step further and say, if I violate that, it's going to cause me to violate the others? Maybe not all 9, maybe 3, maybe 6. Right?
Yeah.
Ricky, are we talking the man to God as well as the man to man?
Absolutely. Beautiful, John. Beautiful question. Absolutely. Absolutely. We're talking both. We're talking that if a person violates the man-to-man mitzvah of coveting, he will violate the man-to-God mitzvah of belief and connectedness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Beautiful. Very good. That's right.
It's also the only one of them that's doing your thoughts. Everything else has an action attached to it,
Everything else
So-
has, right, that's very
an
good.
outward action, right?
And that makes it, by the way, that makes the point even stronger. Even
Right.
stronger,
Right.
right?
It starts with your thoughts. It starts there and then everything else. It's like
And
the
it
bottom
will
of the
destroy-
Jenga
And it
puzzle.
will destroy everything. It'll cause a person, Anenu, to destroy everything, to the extent, to Joey's point, where it will ruin a person's connectedness to God. Destroy that too. Okay, it's a very logical point, but it teaches us a klal. It teaches us a principle, which is that anytime you see a list of mitzvot, the last mitzvah on the list is the most important. Good. Okay, we go in ascending order. That works. But then we go one step further and we say, not only is it the most important, but it's the cause of the potential, if the violation of it is the cause of the violation of everything that preceded it. Okay? Hold on to your hats, because now we're going to start to run with this thing. What is Parashat Mishpatim? Tell me about Parashat Mishpatim. Serene, what is it?
It's the laws between man and man.
Beautiful. What are some of the things included?
Not to steal from each other, how to treat a widow, how to treat a poor person, how to treat a slave.
Fantastic. Torts, damages, holidays, Shabbat, sacrifices, right? Very long list. And to your point, Serene, exactly. It's a shocking parasha in that it comes right after the Ma'amad Har Sinai and the 10 Commandments, where you would think HaKadosh Baruch Hu's focus would remain in this fantastic metaphysical world. But what does he do? Because Judaism is so practical and so about building the beautiful society that the Jewish society is meant to become. He immediately goes to practical laws. Immediately. Good. There's tens of laws listed in Parashat Mishpatim, right? Good. What's the last one on the list? Sari, talk to me. What's the last one on the list? Huh? Guess.
I don't know.
Guess. I set you up for it. Guess.
The last law on the list in Parashat Mishpatim.
Yeah.
לא תבשל גדי בחלב עמו.
There you go, Jeff. There you go. Do not cook the calf in its mom's milk. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? It has absolutely nothing to do with anything that preceded it. 0, 0, 0.
But it does. But it does.
How?
It does, because if it's a kal vachomer, like if God's telling you how to treat a person who's your equal, who's alive, how much more so we're treating an animal. We have to treat an animal with respect that's dead. That
Okay.
So it's like a kal vachomer.
Okay, so you want to call it a kal vachomer, like lo tachmod. Beautiful. Right. I love the idea. Like,
I mean, we take care of our dead. We take care. I mean, we do that, right? So we respect the dead. That's right.
Beautiful. Okay, so we're going to say, from a humanistic point of view, and I think it's a beautiful point, we're going to ignore your point. Allows us to ignore the metaphysical side of this thing. We're going to ignore that for a minute. We're going to say, from a purely humanistic point of view, if we are kind-hearted and gentle, we're going to have less problems with other people. We're going to treat the slave better. We're going to treat the slave girl better. We're going to have fewer issues with damages and torts with other people. So if we have the compassion, the basic human compassion that would preclude us from cooking a calf in its mother's milk, we are thereby, to Serene and Zeke's points, more compassionate people overwhelmingly. And we're going to do better in all these Ben Adam Nachavero areas, in all these between man and man areas.
Right.
Beautiful. Good. Now, what about the metaphysical stuff? What about the metaphysical?
If there's a metaphysical element, then that would mean that if you had somehow a pot of boiling milk and somebody kicked and never found out about it, the baby calf into it, and they never knew, nobody ever knew that it happened, that in and of itself would create this bad energy in the world that we didn't even know about.
The only issue would be, we have a concept in Yahadut called anus. Anus means it was done to me against my will. Anus. Right. I had nothing.
But the negative energy doesn't have to be to me; it's to the world. It's out there.
Okay, it could be. You know what? I never thought about it, but you're right. It could very well be that when you stick these two things together, even if it can't hang on Mr. X, it's there and it ain't good. Very good. Agreed. Now we can go with Serene's point, which is absolutely buttoned down, beautiful. That if a person doesn't have basic compassion, he's going to be a less good guy in society. Hands down, perfect. It's fine. But we can't leave it there. A, because our rabbis won't let us. And they say that the gadi b'chalev imo, the calf in its mother's milk, is not purely a human compassion thing. It has all kinds of those other elements that are brought into the picture. Now, then you add another spot to it, which is that what is the jump off point for the laws of kashrut in Judaism? Where do we get all the laws of kashrut from? Right here. We get them right here. We get them from right here. So you have the tens of pages, maybe it's hundreds, few hundred pages in Shulchan Aruch regarding all the laws of kashrut. They're built from this. They're built from you can't eat meat and milk together. And it extends to say, well, you can't eat these things together. You can't eat chicken with milk. And then it extends further to say you can't eat chickens that are not shechted the right way. And then it extends further and says you can't eat certain types of fish. And then it goes further and says you can't eat the right type of fish if it's prepared the wrong way. And on and on and on. And by the way, very interestingly, in the laws of kashrut, we see some fascinating things. In the mahalach, in the process of the development of the laws of kosher, we see that in certain cases, the people made the laws. Fascinating. Where the rabbis would say, for example, you know what? Have one set of glass dishes in the house. Nothing wrong with it. Nothing happens to it. And Maran and the Rosh and others write that no, we're not going to have them. We don't have one set of dishes in the house, even though a glass dish doesn't absorb it, it's not a problem, because the women, Jewish women said, we don't want to go there, and it's going to blur the distinctions between meat and milk in our kitchens, and we don't want it. So we went to say that there is a metaphysical side to cooking a calf in its mother's milk. We understand the process, the orderliness of mitzvot, that the last is the most important, and it's the cause of everything that came before it. In Parashat Mishpatim, it's a bomb, because, like we said, everything that comes before it is overwhelmingly interpersonal. There's some ben adam lemakom, but it's overwhelmingly societal. How to build the perfect society. How do you build it? By eating the right way. What? Come on. But it gets better. Last week's Parashat Ki Tisa, we have the big headline for Parashat Ki Tisa is what? What did we read last week? What's everybody talking about? Jay?
Golden calf.
Golden calf.
Beautiful. The golden calf, right? Everybody's talking about the golden calf. And when they're not talking about the golden calf, what are they talking about?
Luchot.
Yeah, the luchot.
Second there.
The second set of luchot. Beautiful. And then what are they talking about after that? What are they talking about after that? Huh? They're talking about the Yag Midot, the 13 attributes that when we utter them together as a people, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's heart has to be drawn back to us. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, I'm going to tell you the secret sauce so that when you distance yourself from me and you've hurt me and you've broken the relationship, I'm going to tell you the words that you say to me where you will grab my heart no matter what, just about. The 13 attributes, right? Good. What's not talked about from Parashat Ki Tisa, there's a number of mitzvot. We talk about the mitzvah to go into the land of Israel and destroy the nations that are there. There's a mitzvah of the prohibition against Avodah Zarah. Pesach is mentioned. The Peterechem, that the firstborn of certain animals is dedicated to God. Shabbat is mentioned. The Shalosh Regalim are mentioned, right? Serene, what's the last mitzvah at the end of this list of mitzvot?
I'm gonna guess something to do with keeping kosher.
Talk to me. What is it?
Meat and milk, meat and milk, meat and milk.
Lo tevashel gedi v'halev imo.
Again?
Again.
The third time.
Again. Come on. What are you talking about? It's spectacular.
It's the linchpin. It's the linchpin.
It's the linchpin.
You
And
don't
know
get that one, you
something?
can't do anything.
Beauty's sake. You know what the context is? Did we lead up to it by talking about you can't eat a sheretz, a lizard, or you have to clean a lizard from the lizard family, or you have to clean your food from bugs, or yayin nesech, the wine of the goyim that we can't drink? Did we talk about any of those things? Zero. But here again, in a list of critical mitzvot, where do we end? We end with Lo tevashel gedi b'chalev imo. And what does that tell us? It tells us, remember our topic, the forces that shape us. It tells us that there's something about kashrut that has a metaphysical element to it that we can't yet quantify. Same way 200 or 300 years ago, they couldn't quantify what sugar does to this person's body and what, what's that stuff I don't eat? What grains do to that person's body, right? Or what this does to this person's brain or so on. Gluten, right? We couldn't quantify those things, now we can. And now, as we mentioned, the research has gone further, and now the research has gone to foods for the brain. So how the food impacts my intellectual muscle, how spectacular is that? How new is that? How it impacts my memory, how remarkable, how food impacts my memory. So the Torah perspective is a couple of steps further. You are what you eat. Food shapes me. It brings certain energies around me. It allows me to think a certain way, to engage the world a certain way, to impact and move things in my life a certain way. And when I adhere to the whole package of Lo Tevashel Gedi B'Chadei B'Imo, meaning kashrut, I am engaging this physical, metaphysical force that will have a profound impact on me. And that's what we hold. That's what we hold.
Beautiful, Zaki. Very nice.
Sorry?
I said very nice.
Thank you. Let's wrap it up with a few pieces. The Rambam mentions that kashrut has an absolute impact on the seichel, on the intellect of the Jewish person. The Or HaChaim says that the food a person eats will shape his or her disposition. Pri Hadash goes one step further, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. And I don't understand it, but I'll put it out there so we could all struggle with it. I know Jamie did a project once on the impact for the fetus, for the baby to be, on the mother's eating habits and how they impact the baby. I mean, it's really a direct connection. You would say that what the mother is eating and how the mother eats would establish the health of the baby, first of all, and would establish the eating habits of the baby, right? And based on her research, that's what she found to be true. The Pri Hadash says that your children are what you eat. That somehow the energy that you build within you based on your approach to food will impact your children's lifestyle, happiness, sociability, direction, and so on.
Not what you eat after they're born.
After they're born. After they're born.
Yeah?
Yeah, I don't know. But look, if we're going to say, we know that we're absolutely connected to our children, right? We know that, right? We know, God forbid, if a child is in pain, even if we weren't told something, a parent senses it. We know that. We know that a bird senses when her offspring is in pain. We know that an animal, that a lion does, even if they weren't told, even if nobody got a text to them, right? They know that. So we know the same thing is true by us. And we know when a child walks into the room without saying a word, we can sense that child's happiness or serenity or otherwise. We know it. So there's a zikika. There's a connection here, a non-physical but absolute connection. So the Pri Hadash is saying, yeah, man, there's an absolute connection. And you know how far it goes? It goes as far as the food you eat. How's that, mommy or daddy? That the food you eat will impact your children. So, in wrapping it up, the risk in doing these classes, all of us together, was these are absolutely intangible. The reason we can do them is because we live in a place where we very comfortably remove the boundaries between physical and metaphysical. We talk to God. He talks to us. We pray to God. He acknowledges what we do. Nobody argues that. Pashut. Why wouldn't anybody argue that? Once we're not arguing that, and we haven't argued it for over 5,000 years, and we in our own lives know it and have felt it, then we can go one step further to say that the areas that we don't yet understand, those have energy too. And those energies can and should be used for the positive. When I do Netilat Yadayim in the morning, going back to last week's class, I am clearing the way for me to have a level of empowerment and clarity that's simply God-given and unlike everything else. And when I build my diet along the parameters of Lo Tevashel Gedi B'Chalev Imo, everything that came from it, I'm harvesting, I'm harnessing forces and a little bubble that enable me to approach just about every other mitzvah with a much greater opportunity to do and to excel. And that's the force that drives us. Good. Thoughts, questions? We're good?
Very,
Great.
very nice. Very
Good
nice.
to see everybody as always. Ezra, thank you for joining us. Great to see you. Long time.
Bravo.
Pleasure.
Thank you. How are you? Everybody good?
Everyone's good, thank God. I'm very impressed with everyone's comments and
So,
passion and your knowledge.
This
as
class is a
always.
gift. It's a
I
gift.
love the way
It really
you
is.
share your knowledge, Ricky. It's fabulous. And
Thank you.
one connection, maybe for another class, is how Rambam teaches us the dietary laws and rules. And he also starts off by saying you have to break a sweat in the morning, so
That's right.
everything works best.
Absolutely.
And then you have more patience for your children, your business partners, for yourself, less anger.
Yeah, he
So
talks
there's a
about physical
connection.
exercise. He does. He does.
Yes.
He wrote 10 pieces on health. Rambam wrote 10 separate pieces on health. Remarkable thing. Great.
And just a comment.
Beautiful. Very nice.
Someone earlier mentioned something about the couch they sit on. It's interesting when you look at your house, you think of all the jobs that were created. You look at the wallpaper and you think of the designer that put her or his energy into designing the wallpaper and then producing it and then getting it to your home and then the person that applied it. So when someone says, why did you fix your house? Or why did you build this extra room? Not only is it for us, but it's also to give opportunity to others to expand their creativity, to create jobs. And, you say a beracha, yes, on the fruit that's grown from the tree, but at the same time, if you have a wood floor, you're also realizing that came from another source.
Beautiful.
And it's all connected. And as long as we appreciate what we have, and we say the berachot, often when we say potech et yedecha, I love to share with my family and close friends, one hand, and Sonny knows this. That's Sonny Braha from Moreshet.
Yeah, that's Sonny
Yes.
from Moreshet.
Don't put me on the spot.
So what was
It was 4 years ago. Well,
what was the comment? The left hand and the right hand.
oh,
Okay,
I
so
don't think I remember.
all right, so it's okay. So
Sonny,
one
they're not
hand-
going to redo your grades, honey. Don't worry. They can't get back there. They can't get
Right.
back.
One hand is to receive, the other hand is to give.
Nice. Very
And
nice.
it's not just for us to take two hands worth. And that's it. So anyway, I'm happy to see everyone. And
Thank you.
Ricky, as always, Hazako Baruch, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Great to see everybody.
Thank you, Ezra.
Take
Thank you.
care.
Thank you,
Thank
Ricky.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.